Tim, are we ready for a game that I don't know? I feel like every time out it's like a referendum, but this isn't really a referendum. I think, but it is the best test that Nebraska's had. Are we prepared to kind of negotiate that?
I think yeah. I mean, like it's the way you put it. It's just like I think this is the culmination of the first 3 weeks. Like you got the run look last week. You've gotten like an opportunity to see like what a potent passing offense looks like. You've been able to string together offensively. You've been able to close out some games. Now it's just about putting all of that together and showing you can finish out a game. Um, I think Nebraska gets it today, but I don't think this is going to be the hardest fight they've dealt with. This is going to be the hardest opponent they've dealt with. And I'm really interested to see, like, my main thing right at this point is just like, can this team finish out a game? Like, what does this look like in the third and fourth quarter when it's still like a potentially one-score game?
Tim, are we going to do this every week? Like, it feels like we kind of have done this, not you and us talking. We are going to do that every week. But it feels like we've done this every week with Nebraska, right? Like, UTEP was like, okay, can they take care of business against an inferior opponent? And then Colorado was, oh, we got the Demons from last year. And then you and I was like, oh, they got the big running game. And this year it's the Big Ten opener. Next week it's going to be the first road game. And then Rutgers wants to make it ugly. And then we got football Jesus, Kurt Signetti. And, like, we got are we just going to do this every week?
Yeah, I mean and part of it, I think, like, again, like, I think today could help. Like, if today they win decisively, I think going into next week you're like, oh well, they should handle business. Like, I mean, obviously there's going to be a thing with the first road test, but
Purdue's
I think
bad.
part of it too is just
like Purdue's bad,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, Purdue's bad. I mean, Purdue and UCLA.
Don't let him off the hook. He earlier at Pinnacle Bank during the championship, he was saying Purdue that'd be an acceptable loss.
No, you said that. I said Rutgers.
He's
lying to you, Tim. Don't worry about it.
People that look like us say that's called switching it up.
Well, people that look like me and Tim agree with each other, so you can go. Sorry, continue.
I'm sorry, Tim.
Yeah, I like Purdue. I think Nebraska's will be able to handle business there. Like, again, like that road test. Like, that's my thing though. Is like, if they're not able to get up for a road game against what I've so far has looked like a bad team, like, if you can't get up for that, I feel like that answers a lot more questions about how the rest of the season could potentially go than it doesn't. Like, I obviously we need to see that question answered from them, but I think this team's going to handle business 1 week from now. But today will also help you kind of figure out, what this team does look like going into Rutgers and going into Indiana. Like, I think Nebraska should be the favorite team going into all of those games. But I think again, like, Rutgers early on presents you a challenge. They've just dealt with injuries. Indiana's going to play very sound football early on, but I just don't think Indiana has a talent just yet to stack up with a Nebraska team. I think is towards the top of the Big Ten right now.
Hey, so Tim, let me ask you something. How do Fridays or games like this, no pun intended, affect recruiting? Right? It's obviously it's tough with high school, and I know Coach Rule is not always in love with playing these Friday night games, nor are a lot of college coaches. But are there any benefits?
Somewhat. I mean, the only benefit I think of this specifically, like, it's going to be a very small visitor list, like a very underwhelming, maybe the smallest they'll have all year. It's mainly just local guys that either played yesterday or are playing tomorrow. And so you're not going to get the in-person visit effect, but what you are going to get is the recruits that aren't playing tonight or aren't really around tonight, or the ones that come home early from their game. They're going to be able to watch Nebraska tonight, and that's really the only big-time game that's on tonight. So Nebraska gets another opportunity in front of a national audience. I think the third time they've had that this year, unless you count last week, but I don't think that many people were tuned in for Northern Iowa, at least on TV. But you get another national opportunity to kind of show, okay, like, here's the program, here's what we're building. And, like, I do think Nebraska's done a good job of selling the in-stadium environment over TV. Like, people I've talked to that haven't been to a game yet and I've been able to only watch from TV, they're like, man, it looks crazier than it has in a couple of years. Like, as crazy as this crowd has always been, it does look crazier than it has in a couple of years. It's like, it's good to see that's translating over TV, because that makes an impact on recruiting for sure.
Yeah, Tim, and it seems like it really made an impact in the last couple of recruiting visitors in the last couple of weeks. how I guess I think sometimes at Nebraska we sort of take the atmosphere for granted and that recruits should always be enamored by it. But how much different has it sounded the last 2 weeks when you've talked to recruits, especially after that Colorado game?
Yeah, I mean, like I put out a story yesterday with Hunter Higgins, and like just there was a quote from there that I keep coming back to that like guys have echoed like similar sentiments of just like the pageantry and everything that happened in that Colorado game. For Higgins specifically, he was like it just felt like the like what people when people talk about the '90s winning feeling in Nebraska, like that's what it felt like. And those kids, me myself, like I was born in 2000, like I didn't experience that. I've only seen that on TV. Like all these kids too, they were born even after that, so they've never experienced it. But they've heard stories and they've heard plenty about it, and they're starting to see that again. They're starting to experience that again. Like experience what it's like when Nebraska makes a team quit. Experience what it's like when Nebraska is rolling and the crowd's engaged the entire time. Like I think more than even 2 weeks ago, at least for local guys that have been around the campus like Christian Jones and Tyson Terry, guys that have been around. I think last week the fact that the student section and the crowd in general stuck through 3-4 quarters of Northern Iowa, despite that game pretty much being handled pretty early on. I think that said a lot more of just like, okay, the buy-in is real right now from the fan base and the university overall.
Tim, when you're talking about kind of I'm on this thing now the last handful of days, probably last 7 to 10 days about Coach Rule and his roster management. And it started way back at Big Ten Media Days when, we were trying to figure out how he flipped the roster without really flipping the roster. Because he's got old guys, he's got young guys. He's got young guys waiting in the wings. He's got a mature team. He's negotiating the Van Poppels and the Calebs, and he's totally playing the long game while still winning. Do recruits see that? Do you see that roster management appears to be a clear strength of his?
Yeah, like I think recruits see it. I think recruits like for them, I think what helped with all of them is from recruiting onward, the staff is very honest about how they see these players. Like they're not going to tell a player, okay, well we see you as this, and then they get to campus and we're going to switch it up. It's like, okay, our plan for you is this. We're going to either bring you along slowly, bring you along fast, and you're going to play this position, this position, this position. Like this is how we see you in the defense or the offense, and this is our vision for you. They've done a really good job of just maintaining that like authenticity with these guys. So these guys don't come on campus and then it suddenly switches up on them, or vice versa, or it's like, they know what their role is. And so it's like, hey, like if this isn't fit for you or you don't see this, like don't come here. Like at the same time, it's like, but I think the fact that they just maintain that roster, that authenticity with these guys, that's how you keep guys happy in this NIL era. Like, again, there's a lot of guys right now that, maybe in other situations they're getting told they're going to redshirt this year out of the blue. They'll be like, oh, well, maybe I'll just keep an eye on the transfer portal and see what pops up there. I don't think that's going to happen with Nebraska, with the guys they're talking to about potentially redshirting this year, even after playing last year or any of that, just because I think the staff is maintained from the jump, like, okay, this is our vision for you, and this will help the team and you in the long term. Like, I think these guys also recognize that they're seeing results too of the development taking place. So it's a little easier to trust. Maybe last year was a little difficult to like, okay, why do you want me to redshirt when I'm kind of making an impact? But this year, it's easier to sell it because it's like, okay, we have this depth, and 2, you're going to play a lot more next year, and 3, you see what a year going up against the number 1 offense or number 1 defense can do for your game. Like for Riley Van Poppel, for example, now in scout offense, he basically is going up against Ben Scott and Micah Mazuka when Micah Mazuka's out there, going up against those guys every single day. That's going to make him a better player. Like he's going to be all the better for that next year because he's going up against those guys in practice every single day.
Tim, I'm going to give you 3 guys. Okay. And I'm not going to call it a tug of war, but there's mutual interest. Either Nebraska's been re-engaged, currently engaged, or he's already in the fold. Which one of these guys will winning at their respective schools matter the most? Okay, it'll make more sense when you hear the names. Julian Marks, who's got the Kansas verbal. Roderick Scholl, who's got the Auburn verbal. Or Mr. Jeremiah Jones, who has the Nebraska verbal. when you look at those three, how much will winning at those respective schools relative to Nebraska matter the most?
Yeah. I don't think it's Jeremiah. I mean, winning would help with Jeremiah. Like, continuing to win would help, especially with what, like, they're trying to hold on to him compared to Missouri, who's doing what they're doing. But,
what about if Missouri continues to win?
yeah, I mean, that would make a big impact because I think the big thing there right now is Missouri's kind of selling him on one, NIL, and two, just the closer proximity to home than Nebraska has right now. I think the Missouri continuing to win helps there. I think the same thing with Scholl, just because I have no reason to believe. I think he's pretty locked in from an NIL standpoint over there. But I think with Scholl is that one just feels like he feels like a Midwestern recruit. He feels like a Big Ten lineman.
They loved it here. Like, I don't think that was lip service. I can repeat, like, they had a general affinity for Nebraska.
I get that recruitment gets me a weird vibe just because, like, everything about that recruitment and that kid talking to his family, getting a feel for him, he reads Donovan Raiola offensive lineman to me. Like, it just feels that way with him. And the way he talked about it too, he was like, I just love that Matt Rhule's like, I'm just looking for a genuine staff. And I keep coming back to him, like, you really got that from Hugh Freeze? You really got, like, that authentic staff feel or that authentic head coach feel from Hugh Freeze? Like, I just don't get that from them. And I feel like this was one where Auburn was like, we're in on this top tackle. We have him graded out higher than some other schools. Nebraska has him graded out pretty high, but we have him graded out pretty high as well. And so, like, we're just going to lock him in. And I do think the on-campus environment and some of the off-field stuff at Auburn checks some boxes for Broderick. He's really into, like, beekeeping, and he really wants to do that. And Auburn did check those boxes, but so did Nebraska. And so it's like, I think if Nebraska continues to engage in both these programs, keep winning, I think proximity and the more genuine relationships I believe he has in Nebraska could end up winning out there. Julian March, like, that just may be a thing of matter of time, honestly, because that Kansas staff, I think they've kind of hit their ceiling there. And I don't really know. Like, they've got a good a young backup quarterback I like in Isaiah Marshall, but I don't think he's ready to come in and step in for Jalen Daniels, who I don't think is the guy we saw a year or two ago.
Tim, I think this might be the first time in history I've been concerned about losing a recruit because of a beekeeping program. But I did want to ask you about
not a big Jason Statham fan, obviously, because it's a good movie.
You can't watch Inglourious Basterds, but you're gonna drop Jason Statham on me. All right,
and it's totally typecasted too, so it's like it's not like he's mad he kills a bunch of people. He was a beekeeper. I mean, plot twist.
Spoilers, thanks. Tim, I did want to ask you about kind of that authenticity you were talking about with the staff and how much that helps with a situation where I think you could look at it from the outside and see the intention to redshirt Malachi Coleman as a sophomore and of Riley Van Poppel as a sophomore as maybe something that would turn some higher level recruits off. How have you heard any recruits talk about that specifically, or have you talked to anybody about that? Because that I think is something that I think kind of raised some eyebrows for people.
It does. I haven't talked to anyone about it, but I think if you were to ask recruits about it, and again, like my thing is with those two guys specifically and what Nebraska kind of is wanting to do in terms of building this program up and the way they talk to recruits as well, like they just manage the communication and there's nothing really left. Like there's nothing secret kind of here in terms of just like your role. That's not going to get sprung up on you. Like, for Malachi, like that, he needs development, like you needed to develop into a true route runner. Like there were times last year where it's like you need him on the field just because he's one of the better athletes on the team, and you need someone that can just get open downfield. You have those guys already now, and those guys can run routes. So let's get Malachi, like just sit and practice and learn from Isaiah Nair, learn from Jamal Banks, learn how to run routes, like learn how to practice, like learn how to do these little things right, and then it'll come together. Like ideally the goal is it'll come together after a year of doing this. And I think when you sell it to recruits in the term of just like, we're all about development here, even if it means like, obviously we want you to see the field. We understand you want to see the field. but we're about development here, and you're going to be a better player long term for it, because they have the proof in the pudding from the Baylor days, from already the year one. Like, again, like, you think about the guys on this team right now who did sit that year and are better for it. You know, like we talked to Kai Wallen last week, and he's like, yeah, it's easy for me to tell Riley Van Poppel to take that redshirt year because how much it helped me last year. Or you talk to, I mean, even a guy that didn't really redshirt, but just guys you've seen develop year over year, Mekhi Bear and John Bullock. I keep coming back to those guys just because of the improvement we've seen from those two players, and how, like, going into the year, I was like, oh man, I don't know, like, these linebackers are veterans in their experience, and they should be able to hold their own. I didn't expect them to be a strength of the defense. Like, I just didn't expect that, where it's like, oh, these guys are flying around. John Bullock's making plays the way I've heard y'all talk about Bullock and some of the stuff he's done the last 2 weeks specifically. But seeing those guys make plays the way they are, it's like, that's the staff. That's development. Like, how would you not, like, as a recruit, not see that and be like, okay, I trust that their vision for me is correct.
Hey, so let me ask you something, TV, because the Dvorak talk always obviously gets me giddy because I'm Team Rob, but I think a guy that was kind of undersold, especially on the recruiting trail, was EJ Bartell, and all his guys have done under his watch is get better. Under, over, just kind of value. Like, how do you think we think about Coach Bartell?
Yeah, I think he's earning a lot of goodwill, and I think, like, you know, I think he's got to, like, Dante Dowdell, like, hitting the way he has so far has really helped. Like, again, the overall stride. Like, I keep nudging Steve in the press box next to me every time Ramir Johnson gets the ball, and I'm like, he didn't move like that, like, earlier. Like, he was always fast, he was always quick, but he's got a shiftiness to him in, like, the open field now, where he's making guys miss, like, almost in a phone booth, that he didn't seem to have in years past. And I'm like, that came over this last offseason. That was something that the staff kind of honed in. You see the way Emmett Johnson's running now. It's like, okay, like, there's been improvement across the board. So you're seeing the on-field development from Bartell and his guys. But then on the recruiting side of things too, it's like Dante Dowdell. In retrospect, that was a pretty big win, you know, and you know, Jamarian Parker, that's a big win. And Nebraska's winning him because of his relationship with Bartell. And you look at 2026, and the early relationships he has, and it's like, okay, Nebraska's in a really good spot with Stephen Walker. They're in a really good spot with Brian Bonner. They're in a really good spot with multiple running backs. And it's like, okay, like, you know, I think AJ got some heat early on, but he's done a really good job of bringing guys in. And I don't even think you can undervalue, like, Connor Booth, like, landing Connor Booth, keeping him in the state, and just a guy that you've kept committed and kept happy, even as you continue to add running back talent to the roster. Like, that's a guy that's still willing, more than happy to come to Nebraska, that's going to provide you some, like, you know, a bigger back. I think he deserves some credit. I think obviously Dvorak deserves some credit for what he's doing. And I said this kind of when people were raising pitchforks about Dvorak back in, like, June, when Dawson Merritt committed to Alabama and Christian Jones was uncommitted. And I was like, listen, I've been, like, at A&M, for example, like, I've been at programs where linebackers coaches get this heat for not being able to win out recruitments, but it's like the guy at A&M when I was covering there and the guy here, both did a really good job of building relationships. It wasn't relationships that won in recruitments at the end. It's a combination of different things that specific coach can't account for. But Dvorak did everything he could in the Christian Jones recruitment, and obviously he came out on top with that one. And he did everything he could in the Dawson Merritt recruitment, which that one's not done yet. That one, like, Nebraska's going to keep chipping away. Nebraska's going to have a chance here in December to potentially flip them away on signing day. Like, I think Nebraska's, like, Dvorak specifically put Nebraska in a good spot with a lot of guys, built some good relationships. And you look ahead to 26, Nebraska's in on some of the top linebackers in the country, and it's because of Rob Dvorak.
Tim, speaking of that 2026 class, I believe I read this correctly. You've got Nebraska in the driver's seat for the number one tackle in the country, Jackson Cantwell. Is that right?
As of right now, I do. Yeah, I just think, like, boxes keep getting checked, and, like, talking to him, I think I underestimated some of the, like, the local ties he's got. Like, his mom's from Crete, Nebraska. He's still got his grandparents still live in the state. Like, he's had family members that have played at the program in the past. The proximity to home's a big factor, the opportunity to play in both sports. Like, I think those combination of factors have Nebraska sitting really well early on. Again, this is far from done. And I say driver's seat now when, like, you know, he hasn't really been to LSU like that. He's going to get out there. That's a school he's really intrigued by. He's going to get out to Alabama again. He's going to get out to Georgia again. Like, this is a recruitment that's going to go the distance, that's going to continue to twist and turn. But like, this isn't David Sanders where Nebraska's entering late and like, it's like, okay, Nebraska, like, they're going to be ahead at the table potentially. No, I think Nebraska's got a real contender here. I think it's going to take a lot for a school to come in and be like, okay, here's why we're going to do this, and this better than Nebraska. Like, I think the development that Canwell's seen from Grant Brick over this first year that he's been on campus has been big, from Gunnar Gatula. Like, seeing the fact that the young guys are getting developed on the field, seeing the fact that, like, he's going to have that opportunity to do both sports and succeed in both sports. And something that, like, I've actually had multiple members of the track team hit me up about this too. Nebraska's track coach, Coach St. Clair, is one of the better throws coaches in the country. Like, he's a guy that's developed multiple guys that have gone on to compete in the Olympics, guys that have led the Big Ten. And obviously, you've seen the success that he's had just in track and field overall at Nebraska. But the fact that he's one of the better throws coaches is something no one's really talking about recruitment, and that's like a relationship's already being built there. And I like Nebraska as of right now, just because of those combination of factors.
Tim, as we get into the Illinois game tonight, you have a feeling about how you think this one's going to go?
Yeah, my prediction has been 27-17. I think I'm sticking by that. I think Nebraska is able to pull away and win the way they want to in that fourth quarter, where they just hammer the ball, they run for 75 plus yards in the fourth quarter alone type win. I think the advantage here for Nebraska is going to be I don't trust Illinois' offensive line. I think the D line is going to have an opportunity to get after the quarterback a little bit. I like their stable of running backs, but I do think, like, Caden Fegan, it doesn't run, like, as big as he is, he doesn't run as hard as some of the Northern Iowa running backs you saw last week. I think he's a little light between the tackles. Like, he's better in space, just from what I've seen. And maybe that's just like he tricks you because he's so big. It doesn't look like he's running through contact, but he actually is. But I just kind of see a guy that I think Nebraska's going to be able to get their hands on and be able to bring down. I think the defensive back is going to get tested because this is a good passing offense, and Luke Altmaier brings you a little juice. But I think Nebraska's going to have an opportunity to get after Altmaier a little bit. And then offensively, I just trust that they're going to be able to string drives together. I trust that this is going to be a very complex defense that they're going to see. It's going to be Dylan's probably his toughest test so far. But I kind of trust him to make the safe play, to take what's there. And I trust that Nebraska's at least going to be able to run the ball tonight.
Hey, store it in the Rolodex next week, Tim. I'm going to ask you about Cooper Terwilliger.
Okay, I got you.
All right, buddy.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Tim, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, talk soon.
See you,
We'll
TV.
be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.